Party Buff. Hi everyone and welcome back to Party Buff. We are back with Azrenix, Oscitater, and myself, GoodRootsGames, as we start talking about the gaming industry and support in the gaming industry to really build into what it means to be a developer, to be a purchaser of a game, and just to find out what we think as customers and as clients of these companies, how we think they could do better or what we think they do absolutely right. So once again, let's welcome back sorry, not DS. Yeah, I was going to say DS the original, but because I usually introduce him first, but DS is not with us this round. So we just have myself, Azrenix, and Oscitater. Say hi, fellows.
Hey, folks.
We are back. So I think that the thing that we need to talk about in regards to the gaming industry is something that's been happening, I feel like has happened more and more often recently, which is companies coming in and purchasing old games and then saying they're going to do something with it and then either not doing anything with it or doing something so outrageous with it that it changes the game, or God forbid that it actually ends up making it better. So as I'm going to start with you, what games have you loved or love now that have been purchased by another company, and did they change it? And if they did they make it better, worse, or did it just stay the same and they ignored it?
Well, I can think of a couple of examples right off the top of my head here. The first one I'm going to go with, as everyone knows, Bioware, which was a very loved company, got bought out by EA. And, so long story short here, Bioware is now just a shell of what it once was. And I feel like anything that gets bought by EA pretty much goes down the drain. So to me, I feel like acquisitions by these big other publishers tend to always deprive the uniqueness and the talent that the original developers had. And I mean, although you can say the same about, like, for example, Epic just recently bought out Fall Guys. They bought the company behind Fall Guys, and last year they bought the company behind Rocket League. And for the most part, Epic, I feel like, is a bit more offhand, but at the same time, or hands-off approach. But at the same time, though, they're going to take away games from Steam, like they took away Rocket League from Steam. So in a way, that kind of ends up negatively impacting the consumer, because technically you have to buy the game from only Steam or only Epic launch. You can't buy it from Steam anymore. So I feel like there's different facets of how an acquisition goes. But to me, the biggest one is like when a huge publisher like EA buys a company, and then they pretty much that company goes down the drain from there on.
Have you seen that with any particular game, that the game itself has gone down? Like if a company's purchased a different specific game, I know you mentioned Rocket League and Fall Guys. Have you noticed any major changes after the purchase?
I mean, so me, I haven't really played Fall Guys. I just know of it. And they just recently bought Fall Guys like last week. So too soon to make a judgment call on that. From what I've heard about Rocket League, it's been pretty much the same. They did make it free to play though. So in a way, that's kind of a win for the consumer. But sometimes free to play can also mean a lot of negative effects, such as, bunch of microtransactions up the butt. So, it's a lot of different ways that, free to play doesn't always mean that actually free to play.
Oh, true. Yeah, we've talked about free to play and microtransactions before, and what that can do to a gamer. What do you think, Aussie? Any games that have been purchased by a new company that just either ruined it or made it great?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was trying to think about this earlier, and being a big fan of old school RPGs, and growing up with like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest games, for example. For anybody who doesn't know, Square Enix used to just be Squaresoft. And Squaresoft made Final Fantasy games. Enix was actually the company making Dragon Quest games. So Squaresoft kind of like bought and merged with Enix. I don't know if that's as much of an acquisition as it was a merger, being between like the two RPG giants of the time coming together. But I think they've managed to kind of like do justice to both of those series over time. I don't think there's been any like degradation to either series. I think Final Fantasy has kind of like done more since then, but I don't think either. I don't know if that's as much due to the acquisition as it is like internal, just whichever team's pushing for it more. The other thing that I thought of that kind of like popped to my head I think it was an old studio called like 3D Realms, and it was actually who made Duke Nukem back in the day. For anybody who ever played Duke Nukem as a kid,
dude. I mean,
and they were acquired by beautiful.
My mouse pad right there, man.
Yeah, I believe I think they just went under at some point, but I could be wrong on that. But essentially, they were purchased by, I think it was Gearbox, right? So like people who make Borderlands. Yeah. And I think Gearbox is like a pretty solid company. So I'm like, oh, they're probably going to do it justice. And I know there was a game, I think it was what is it, Duke Nukem Forever?
Yeah.
And that came prior to them purchasing, I think was just in like development hell for years, right? Like years upon years.
It was like 14 years actually.
They kind of like acquired the IP. They pushed the game out, released it, and I never actually played it, but from everything I heard, it was one of those just sort of commercial flops. Like it just didn't hit any of the right notes. And I don't know if that's so much, again, due to the acquisition. Like I don't know if that's something where it needed more time, or if they just needed to scrap Duke Nukem Forever altogether and just do something fresh because it was, so old at that point. Or another thing that I heard was like, there's so many of the jokes are outdated, and it's got these like terrible old tropes of gaming. And I think that's just part of Duke Nukem as a whole. So I don't know if that whole phase just kind of passed on over time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's just a game that doesn't resonate with audiences as much today.
I mean, that's Duke Nukem's thing, though. Duke Nukem's catchphrases and ridiculousness, and that's kind of exactly what he is. I mean, I was a huge fan of the Serious Sam series. Huge fan. And they had this kind of joking rivalry. I think Serious Sam at some point during his games called Duke Nukem some blonde-ass pansy, something like that. I mean, it's just... It's a constant joke thing. So anybody who played Duke Nukem, some of the newer games, and thought, this isn't true to the original, or even worse yet, this is too true to the original. What do you mean it's too true to the original? Duke Nukem is from like the 90s. You have to understand the references are from the 90s. They're not trying to make it like Duke Nukem is now using an iPad to airstrike demons.
Yeah, there was a game called, let's see.
As he digs around for it there.
Bulletstorm.
Hey, I love Bulletstorm.
People Can Fly. Epic Games. Actually, according to this EA, which I didn't know, but whatever the case, I really enjoyed that game. But it was very, very much along the lines of like Duke Nukem. It was just like crude, stupid fucking humor. Like nothing, you're not there for the highbrow. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And it was just like over the top. Everything's ridiculous. But it was a really fun game. I really enjoyed it for what it was. But I remember like at the time of release, it got so much criticism. Like it just got like nailed by the media because they're like, oh my God, it's so violent. Everything's so terrible in it. The jokes are so crude. Like, and I don't know. I think that's just maybe that's just the world we're in today. And I'm an old man.
I think that whenever games get purchased by a new company, you risk them changing the humor because you're literally putting it in the hands of new writers. Most of the time you're changing the person who wrote that in their particular style, much like the last of the books of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was not written by Douglas Adams. It wasn't even written by a family member. And you could tell. It just, you can feel the difference in the books. It's not saying the book is bad, but it's not Douglas Adams. And you shouldn't go in expecting it to be. Much like you shouldn't expect whenever a game has been purchased by a company and it's been 20 years later that they're going to keep it exactly the same thing. So I feel like with the gaming industry and purchasing purchasing old games, I worry mostly for the MMO community, where this happens all the time. People will make an MMO and they will say, you know what? I've had enough of this game. I'm going to sell it to the next highest bidder and I'm going to move on to my next project. And then the bidder who gets it is the one who ends up saying, oh man, this thing was a money pit for them. I'm going to make it a money pit for me. Much like with Rocket League making it free to play or something gimmicky, and then putting all these microtransactions into it. So sometimes I've seen games move on to new developers and new creators or new purchasers or whatever, and they've come out on the better end of it. The jury is still out on Black Desert Online, which recently transferred from Kakao to Pearl Abyss. Now, the name of the shop in Black Desert Online from the get-go was called the Pearl Shop, so we know something was going on. All right, let's not even lie. We know that Pearl was involved. But now that transfer has happened. Terra was recently purchased for the PC. The console, I think, stayed the same.
You about that because I jumped on Terra when it very first released back in the day. It was actually a pay-to-play game. You had to pay a monthly fee for it, and I remember first released, I was really interested in it. Like the combat just looked really appealing to me, and I remember playing it. And then I remember while I was still playing it, not that far into it, probably it was within the first year, I think, they decided to go off of pay-to-play model and transition over to a free-to-play, and I stopped playing it at some point along there. And then I really haven't played in a long time, but I know you've played more recently, like when it's been free to play and as it's now transitioned over through hands. So I'm kind of curious to see like your take on how that's gone for you.
Terra recently got purchased again, and I was playing it on the console. I wasn't playing it on the PC recently because they had the console cross-platform, which was the best thing that happened out of whatever sales they did recently, is that they were just like, we're going to cross-platform it, and everyone's like, hallelujah, and the hallelujah chorus rang down, and the angels shined, and everybody was happy, until it became apparent that that's the only thing they did. And that was probably my biggest gripe with it, was that, yeah, okay, sure, they opened it up cross-platform, and I'm thrilled, but there were still a lot of translation errors between the original Korean to the English. There were still game glitches. There was still problems with, functionality, and I've talked about Terra before, and I've said that for all the glitchiness it has, I will still play that game because the story is so good. I wish the developers cared more about the functionality of the game than they did about just slap a new hat on it, Hey, look, guys, we opened up the Santa event. Isn't that great? Yeah, they've had the Santa event before. If you're going to buy it, can you at least add something to the Santa event? Like maybe add reindeer for us to go kill or something. I don't know. Just, do something.
I think that's like a real high escalate. Add reindeer, cool. For us to kill.
It doesn't have to be intense. It just has to be different. Just a little bit different. If you're going to purchase a game, and I feel like from a business standpoint, what's the goal of a business? To make profit. If a game is already making profit and it is for sale, it makes sense to purchase it and not do anything to it because it's already now making profit for you as opposed to the person you purchased it from. I get that, but don't go around rebranding and remarketing stuff and saying, oh, by the way, it's going to be owned by this person, and then expect us to be excited about it if you're not going to do anything. If that's the case, then just silently do the transfer and be like, oh, by the way, your account's now this. Bye. That's all it should be. That's all it should be. Unless you don't.
I'd probably do that if I were buying a company. I mean, let's hypothetically, if I had wads of cash laying around, if I were buying a company, I would think, and if that company was a moneymaker, I would probably just buy that game or that game developer.
Expectations low.
Yeah, and like just let them do their own thing. Don't even touch it. And silently, have like some kind of ad or something in the bottom of the website, for example, they'll say Azrenix Inc. or something like that, like just hypothetical, So like that way, who the company is owned by or who the developer is owned by, but like no one really freaking cares who it's actually owned by. You know what I mean? Like unless you go looking for it.
Well, in the spirit of transparency, they want to say, okay, everybody, we're moving the game from over here to over here, and it's totally new. I get where they're coming from because they want to be transparent to their clients, and I appreciate that more than they know because communication is a really big thing on my end, something that I appreciate from any company is transparency and not just sneaking through it. But if you're not going to make a difference, then why do I care? And the only time where I feel like this changes is if they're changing companies to one that genuinely either has really great business practices or really terrible ones, because that will move us to one of our other topics here. I'm actually going to jump ahead in the list here and say another thing I was going to talk about later on. We'll come back to the other ones later. But does a developer's reputation influence whether or not you purchase a game? So, Os, let's start with you.
For me personally, frankly, probably not. It should. I feel like it would make sense if it did. I know, not too long ago there was a lot of controversy with like Blizzard, for example. There was a lot of people kind of like boycotting Blizzard stuff. Probably during that time, I was still playing Blizzard games. So I know a lot of people who probably have a more of a straight moral compass than I apparently do, would let that affect their decisions. Realistically, like as a kid, you know, I never knew what company made what game. Like I just played a game because I enjoyed it. And I think I've tried to like carry that mindset over into adulthood. Usually, like if I'll look at a game and kind of see if it looks like it's something appealing to me before I really know who makes it. Like there's been plenty of games actually that I've picked up to play because I'm like, oh, this looks like it would be right up my alley. And then there's the like opening screen of it, and I see, you know, the developer of it, and I'm like, oh shit, these people make that. Awesome. I played this, and this by them. Like that's great. I think there are definitely things where if I'm interested in a game and I know that I already like I noticed the developer for it and I know that I already like that developer, that might positively influence me in order to like try to pick that up. But I don't typically, I wouldn't say I'm typically like negatively influenced or directed away from a game due to whoever has created it.
It's not solely about the negative. It really isn't. I don't want anybody who's listening or watching this podcast to think that we're all about like, yay, negative hype, you know, bad news channel. No. It's not about that. It's more about just our views on developers, good and bad. And on that line, once upon a time, little Megan played on old computers, like IBM computers, DOS, you know, that kind of thing. And once upon a time, there was a game developer called Sierra. If anybody remembers Sierra, raise your hands.
I feel like I've heard that name. It rings a very faint bell.
Yeah.
Sierra is eons old. Sierra's very old, and I don't know who purchased them. I know that they've been purchased now and like a million times, and the company's moved forward with other things, but I do not know for the life of me what they have become. And Sierra made such awesome games. I mean, really cool stuff. It's just back in the day, of course, you're not talking about like super ultra graphics, but they're like little side-scrolling adventures like Eric the Unready. I'm pretty sure that Sierra made Eric the Unready. They made the King's Quest games. I think they made Rex Nebular and the Cosmic Genderbender, which was hilarious. If you have never played Rex Nebular and the Cosmic Genderbender, I really encourage you to do so, because this was not a statement on anything about like the LGBTQ community or anything. This was long before this had ever become kind of a thing. It was just a silly game about a guy who he gets abducted by a spaceship full of women, and they turn him into a woman. And it was hilarious. I was like a kid at the time, and I still thought it was hilarious. I think they also did Maniac Mansion, which was one of the greatest games of all time, and I quoted it as a kid all the time. I loved the green tentacle and the purple tentacle. They were hilarious. And the older games like that, I feel like Sierra, if Sierra was still making games similar to that to this day, I'd be all over it. I'd be like, yes, I want every Sierra game ever made. And I'm the same way about most, not all, NIS games. And their reputation isn't necessarily something that's about, are they good people? Are they bad people? You know, I mean, how many of us buy off of Amazon and still are abhorred by how much money Jeff Bezos has? Come on, you know, we do it because it's convenient. You know, I mean, let's be honest here. But the moral reputation and the gaming reputation don't have to be one and the same on the high road. And in the same purposes, I've heard terrible things about EA games. Terrible! I played EA games growing up, and now apparently EA games is filled with microtransactions. Like, what you see all the memes about, like, buying a burger, and back in the day, buying a burger, it's like, you buy the whole burger, and it's like $60, and now it's like, to buy the burger, it costs only $5, but to buy the lettuce, it's $12, and to buy, you know, I mean, it's like all this other stuff that you do, and apparently that's what EA is known for now. But it's not that bothers me about EA. What bothers me about EA games is that, particularly EA Sports, I used to play SSX Tricky like it was going out of style on the GameCube. I loved it. Loved that game. I played the new SSX, and it feels like they're pandering. Like, look at how hip and cool we are. You get to dress up like this. And, like, everything feels like they're going too realistic with it.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah, hello, fellow kids. And that's what it is. I feel like EA Sports is trying too hard to pander to a hipper generation, by making their graphics super, super, super cool. But you can't tell the difference between watching a television show and playing the game, and that's whenever I don't like a game anymore. I want a game to feel like a game, and I want TV to feel like TV, and please keep them separated. I just don't like... I like interactive parts of it, but I don't want to be confused about what the hell the main menu looks like. It should obviously look like a menu, you know? Thanks, SSX. It just didn't to me,
mind,
so
like,
I would say that it does influence my opinion about buying a game.
There's definitely been times where, like, in newer games especially, it'll transition from a cutscene to gameplay, and I won't realize it, and I'll just be like standing there, and then I'm like, oh wait, I'm in control.
Just like, did the game start? You know, and just sitting there wondering, and not to speak badly of it or anything, one of the most recent Mario games, the one where you get to turn into cats, I can't remember the name of it, but that one we just started playing, it had a transition like that at the beginning. Like, is it over? Are we playing the game? And it's a great game and it's fun, but it is one of those situations that feels like that. Like, going from cutscene to gameplay is beautifully smooth, but almost to a detriment. What do you think, Az? You think about developer influence?
So for me, I have a couple of answers to that question. So I'm like yes and no on that question. Mainly because, so when it comes to, as my community knows, and as some of you guys may know, I don't really pre-purchase games. I don't buy games. I usually wait 2 to 3 years. I said this a couple times on my stream as well. I usually wait 2 to 3 years after the game has been released to buy the Game of the Year edition with all the bug fixes, with all the DLC included, and for a much cheaper price. I have no problem with missing out for a couple of years and getting a cheaper game because of that, and a much more complete game. The exception to that rule, I know, is kind of makes, and I know a lot of developers are doing this now, is a multiplayer game like Overwatch, for example. I bought that game on release the day of, you know what I mean, and I've been playing that game, you know, for the last 4 or 5 years now. And so if they make, you know, when Overwatch 2 comes out, I'll probably buy that day one as well, just because I trust in Jeff Kaplan, you know, Papa Jeff, for the Overwatch team, you know what I mean. And so for him, like, his reputation, like, just for him, I know he took care of Overwatch. He's a great game director and all that kind of stuff. So for him, I'll buy his games day one. Now, if he were to leave, and Blizzard, you know, being they're going downhill, in my opinion, but if he left and Blizzard took over, like, that is somebody new as a game director, I probably wouldn't play Overwatch again, or like probably wouldn't buy. But like, for example, like the recent controversy over Cyberpunk. Like, it was like the biggest game of the freaking decade to now nobody even talks about it anymore. And then, you know, CD Projekt Red was a child, like, you know, like, it was a game darling. It was a game industry darling, you know, after the huge success of Witcher 3 and the, you know, subsequent TV show. It was like, you know, Cyberpunk was all set to be like the biggest game. Everybody was talking about it. There were ads like your mom and your dog probably knew about Cyberpunk coming out, but like now it's just gone to, it was just a meh game. And that's one of the things, because I had friends asking me, like, what, you know, like, as you're not going to buy the game on day one. I'm like, as much as I love CD Projekt Red, no, because I don't trust really any game developer for the most part, because stuff like this can always happen. No matter how good their previous success was, it never guarantees future results. And you can't base like, you know, and especially a game as complex as Cyberpunk. I just had a feeling there were going to be like 1,000 bugs, you know, day one. And they're still fixing those bugs even months later now. And it's probably not going to be fixed for a while yet. So I'll probably buy Cyberpunk sometime next year when it's like, it's right down to like $30. You can really find it for $30. I'll buy next year Game of the Year edition for like $15 and enjoy the crap out of it when everything's been fixed.
So I'm kind of curious, because I know you've said in the past that like The Witcher 3 is probably one of your favorite games, right?
Yeah.
Did you play that right off the bat, or did you play that?
Actually, no, I played it. I actually finished it last year, 2020, like early 2020. So I played at the end of 2019 and then finished it early 2020.
Yeah. See, that's when I played The Witcher 3 as well. And I heard a lot of people saying when Cyberpunk came out and there was all the issues with it, there was a lot of people saying like, oh, this was kind of the same situation with The Witcher 3. Like, when it first came out, it was super buggy and there was all these issues and stuff. So I'm kind of curious to see how far along it'll come in comparison.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, like I said, for me, like Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. And I was gonna play it at release, and then life just happened, and I actually didn't get a chance to play it or buy it. So I just bought it a couple of years later for like, I literally bought it for $15, like 4 years later, with, you know, everything fixed and everything, all that good stuff, and it was the best thing I could have played.
Yeah, a great game.
Once upon a time, games were games. The product was the product. Whenever it was shipped out as is. There wasn't any bug fix. There wasn't any update. They didn't send you a USB drive where you had to put it in and be like, okay, guys, install this patch. No, it was done. Bugs and all, errors and all, it was what it was. And so I think that beta testing was a much bigger thing back in the day because there wasn't a do-over like there is now. And I feel like with the internet and with how quickly it's possible to get updates and downloads and that kind of thing, games just get released and they go, we'll fix it in post. And I think that happens a lot. And I'm going to do a quick segue into customer service based on a story from my mother. Actually was a beta tester for Sierra years and years and years ago. And she got this kind of position because for several things. One, there was a game where my mom had to talk to a prince or something, and she knew from the dialogue, she knew that you had to give this stupid prince a peach. And so she sits there for like 1,000 times trying to give this prince the peach. And she knows that this has got to be the right thing. 1,089 times into this dialogue, a pop-up pops up on the screen. It says, you just tried to feed a prince a peach 1,089 times. Call this number. We want you to be a beta tester. Apparently, she was the only person who ever found that. And the only person who ever called that line. My mom is also the same person who walked along every wall, every nook and cranny, and clicked on every pixel, every single thing to check for little hidden rooms. And sure enough, my mom came across a hidden room that was supposed to be deleted by the developers, and it wasn't, and it was put in as a joke. And the caverns were obviously built out of genitalia like stalactites and stalagmites, and it was everywhere. And so she finds this room and she calls and she goes, so I just found your genital room. And they go, the what room? And she goes, you know, over here. And this developer, she said you could hear him blushing through the phone. She goes, I thought we got rid of that. You know, and it's just like, no, mom managed to find it because she's one of those people. And the idea was you could call a company and somebody would pick up the freaking phone and talk to you about the game. And there used to be actual phone hotlines for hints. Yeah. Nintendo had it in the Nintendo, game magazines. Yeah, it used to be a job. You had to know how to walk through these games and how to do certain things and call hint lines. So you used to be able to pick up a phone and call. And so I think that the games in general have become so numerous. And, you know, game developers are coming out of the woodwork. Computer graphics courses became the thing to do. It was obviously a growing industry and it was a growing business. So people wanted to get their foot in the door. And now we have games coming out just like you could walk in and be drowned by them. Epic is giving them away for free, you know? I mean, Steam has free games. You know, back in the day, you used to have like 12 3.5-inch discs, or you know what I have back at my mom's house, which is like those big old 5.5-inch floppies, you know, whoa, back in the day. And now it's handed to you and people are begging you to play. With that in mind, with the flood of games, I feel like the customer service side of the industry has all but disappeared because they cannot handle customer service calls for every single game. So if you've come across a customer service, and I'll just give mine real quick, the customer service support tickets, where you put in a support ticket and you get something generic back, it feels almost like an insult. Just like, did you even read my complaint? But they also have just billions of players and just all of these accounts to go through. So I don't blame them, but the customer service side of the gaming industry, I feel, has slipped by the wayside. And maybe that's not as important to younger gamers as it is to older gamers, but I would like to hear from y'all about that and see what you think is a good or a bad thing about customer service in the games you play, whether they're online, offline, board games, anything that grabs you as a gaming industry. Do you feel like you're still heard as a customer, or do you feel like you are the product instead of the client? So let's go with you.
I was gonna say, like, you know, when you're talking about the subject about like phone calls earlier, like, I mean, it would be kind of cool to, like, you know, call up a company and like be like, yo, like, this is the thing that you need to change in this game. But you can imagine some of the gaming crowd out there now, how they could abuse the crap out of that. Like, you know, before you could talk to a developer or someone, but now, like, you've seen, like, you know, companies get like death threats pretty much, you know, if a game doesn't come out in time or if something's wrong with this. So yeah, I can only imagine how much worse that would be with an actual phone call. And also, I mean, I guess you can't really have that anymore, because back then I felt like gaming was a niche, you know what I mean? Like, if you said you were a video gamer back in the day, you'd probably be called a nerd, or like, nowadays nerding and playing video games is cool now. You know what I mean? Like times have changed, but back then, video games used to be just for the nerdy kids, and you didn't really want to say that you played video games. You know what I mean? But in terms of customer service, like, and I feel like, yeah, customer service for the most part has just been relegated to Twitter now. Like, if you really want to get a company on the line, you got to go to Twitter, make a big deal out of it, make it public, so to speak, and then the company would be like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Let's talk this over. Yeah, it's really just been relegated to just like making a big deal of everything. And like you said, Artie, it's email, like, talking to them doesn't really do much for the most part now. I feel like a lot of customer service departments have just been outsourced to like the lowest bidder, and they've just, or the lowest, the company that'll be like, hey, we'll take over this, and it's just like a generic response. And can't really blame them because they have a lot of customers. But I remember even like 10 years ago, I had a problem with World of Warcraft, I think, on my account, and I emailed Blizzard, and they were super helpful. Like they got my, like, it wasn't even a generic response the first time. They were like, the first response was like automatically already trying to fix the issue, and it was really cool. And I remember they were just being so helpful. But I feel like if I emailed Blizzard now, I'm not sure how it is 10 years later now, but if I emailed them now, I feel like it'd probably be a lot different. I probably would get like a generic response first, and then after multiple attempts, I feel like they would finally get somebody knowledgeable enough to answer my question. So it is a bit of a grind now to even get a good customer service. And I feel like for me, customer service always comes first. I know this might be leading into another question, but I feel like I always prefer to shop at companies that always had good customer service. Like if there's product A and product B, but product A is like $5 more expensive, but it has better customer support, I genuinely will buy product A because of that, even if it's more expensive, because I know sometime down the line, if something does happen, they got my back. And I love the saying, if you buy once, you buy it for life. Buy once, cry once. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about quality. And like, for example, Costco. I love Costco because they have excellent customer service, some of the best I've seen. And it's one of the reasons why I'll pay a premium just to have a membership and buy stuff from there, because I know that if something does happen to the product, I can return it, no problems, and they'll have my back on it.
They're a good company, no kidding. That's a good one. And I know that I mentioned Amazon earlier, and yeah, I know that Amazon's kind of like the guilty pleasure for purchasers of things, because how can you ignore it? Their customer service, I mean, you get to return stuff in case it doesn't work. It just, they respond to you.
I do want to say something on that one. So I forgot to mention Amazon, because Amazon back in the day, I'm talking about like 15 years ago, when Amazon was still starting to become a thing. Yeah, it was like even when I was starting to sell other things, I remember talking to Amazon customer support, and they were so helpful, so knowledgeable. They were so, like, something goes wrong, like, okay, no problem. Even a couple of years ago, they're still up to that point. But I feel like in the last 2 to 3 years, the customer support has gone downhill. Because even now, I'm gonna make a quick anecdote here. I had these fans on my computer that I bought from Amazon. These computer fans, okay, there was some no-name brand, but they got good reviews. You know what I mean? So I thought they were okay, and I bought them. And like now, a month later, these computer fans have stopped working. And I was really disappointed in that. So I contacted Amazon, like, hey, look, 2 months later, these fans have completely stopped working. And I expected them to just say, okay, we got you, go ahead and return it to us. But in return, all I got was like this customer associate, which I can't blame them. But they started asking me, have you tried plugging it in? I'm just like, what? And they're like, so I'm like, and I didn't want to be like, okay, well, like, hey, I work in IT, I should know my, I know if it's plugged in. And I was gonna start talking to them about how, like, I have a fan controller and how it's plugged into the, the Corsair Commander Pro. I'm like, this person's not gonna know what the heck I'm talking about. So I just say, hey, it's plugged into a fan controller. And then they started asking me some mundane questions like, is the fan light on or something like that? I'm like, there is no fan light. It's a computer fan. You know what I mean? Like, it's if it's not working, there wouldn't be any light at first. Like, it took me a while, and then after like 25 minutes or so, finally they were like, okay, yeah, you can return it to us. And then they're like, we'll charge you a restocking fee. And I was like, what? I'm like, these are $15 fans. And then so I'm a little miffed about that, just because I felt like Amazon was a great company in terms of customer support. But I feel like in the last year or two, they've really started to crack down on a lot of returns, a lot of, they don't have the same customer support as they once did. So that's my little tangent there.
It does kind of affect the way that you handle things. I know that, I try to purchase the item from the company itself if they have a website. I look at who the seller is on Amazon, and I'll try to go to them if they have the same kind of deal in customer service. But it is primarily a customer service issue, and how I relate that to the gaming industry is, yeah, you have a bigger product and you have a bigger clientele, but I feel like it's less personalized. What do you think, Ozzy?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's funny you guys were talking about, you know, back in the day you could just call up like Nintendo, for example, right? Just the like Nintendo hotline. And I remember just in the back of like an instruction booklet or something with your game, there would always be just phone numbers for the companies, or like, call us here, blah blah blah.
Right.
And it's funny you guys had brought up Amazon just on the customer service point. Like I didn't really know Amazon had customer service, because I think this was probably like 5 years ago. I was trying to find a phone number because I just wanted to talk to somebody, be like, hey, just had this issue, like what do I do with it? So I was too fucking lazy to click through like the mile of FAQ shit and like,
Yeah.
what do I do if something doesn't work? Oh, have you tried like, nope, this article doesn't relate to me, let me go find the right fucking one. So I'd much rather just like call, talk to somebody, get it out of the way, bing bang boom, done. Like nowadays, I think Amazon's customer service is literally just return it. Like they just have so much shit that they deal with going in and out that it's like, yeah, just return it. Like we don't even want to talk to you about it. It's easier for you to just return it.
Right.
So I don't know if that's considered good customer service. I mean, it's convenient because I don't really have to worry about anything. I could just go onto their website, say, hey, this is busted, I'm returning it, and then go drop it off at anywhere in the area. There's 30 different places you can drop it off because they've become so huge. But I don't know if that's considered good customer service to me. And it's funny, like as was saying, kind of, right, I don't mean this to sound arrogant. I don't know how to say it without sounding arrogant, but as both of you guys know, I work in IT at NASA. And like earlier this year, I got a computer. I got a pre-built computer for the first time in my life. And like a couple months in, my motherboard died. I contacted them about this, saying, hey, I've tried ABC. None of this is working. What's the process for like returning this and having you guys take care of it? Because it's still under warranty. And getting the like automated message back, hey, have you tried ABC?
Right.
I did. I tried ABC. Actually, also tried, DEF, whatever. Like, I've done everything. Like, I'm turning the computer on. It fails to post. For anybody who like knows anything about computers, if it fails to post, it's not doing anything. It's basically brain dead. It doesn't even get to startup. And they're like, oh, well, if you can get to startup, what are you seeing on your screen? And I'm like, no, it fails to post. Like I can't get anywhere. And it's like, oh, well, okay, here's the process for returning it. But before you do that, can you try like this one more thing? And I'm like, yep, I already tried that. I already told you I tried that 4 messages ago. So what's the process for returning it? Yeah, and just like random stuff like that. I feel like you deal with that a lot more in customer service these days. Sorry, hopefully you guys didn't hear that. I think there was like an AC unit kicking on loud as hell. Anyhow, I feel like you deal like with that a lot more in customer service these days, just in general, not even just in, gaming industry, but it's a lot more of that. Just like, here's the automated message, you even call like a health insurance company, for example, you're going through the 15 prompts and talking, you could tell somebody, hey, this is my issue. And then they pass you to somebody else and they're like, oh, have you tried this one thing that'll fix it? And I'm like, yep. Still an issue. Like I told the last 3 people I talked to, I feel like just customer service in general has kind of gone that way. And I would agree with I think I'm definitely much more inclined to spend money somewhere that has good customer service, or like that treats their customers well. I think part of that probably stems from my old job. I worked for like a family-owned. It was like a chain of stores across 2 states, but it was like a family-owned corporation that I worked at for about 10 years. Like their focus was always just like customer service. And there were definitely cheaper options in the area that I could go to shop for things, but like it's just so much better to have that like pleasant experience, you know?
The peace of mind, yeah.
It really is to have somebody listen to you. And I think we touched on this this next topic here briefly during this conversation, but we're just going to kind of briefly run over it here. How do you feel the gaming industry can learn from the support systems provided by the companies that have done well for you with customer service? And we're all intelligent people, you know, as Aussie, we're all relatively smart. And I would like to think that I'm no fool to the nature of the market. I know that the market is saturated with customers at a higher capacity than what a lot of the customer service representatives can put out. I know this. I'm not dumb. I don't need to be told, well, we have like 20 million customers and we only have 10,000 employees. That sounds like a you problem, honey. And it's more that I think that companies that are struggling to offer customer support that's decent, and I'm just going to call it out, all right? I know that the generic emails have become the godsend of customer service. Is it plugged in? Did you turn it on? Is your breaker flipped? You know, I mean, all kinds of stuff like that. I know that generic emails have become the godsend because sometimes they are genuinely simple problems, and it fixes a lot of them. But I would like to say that the companies that are struggling with their customer service side, even though they send out generic emails, need to actually have somebody read the entire email before choosing a generic response. And I don't mean to be mean about it, but recently I had a problem on Twitch. Those of you who follow my channel know that I had this issue with Twitch. I had inappropriate bots coming in and trolling my channel. And I'm not talking about trolls. I'm talking about very inappropriately named. It was a terrible situation on my stream. And it was actually enough that I almost stopped streaming entirely. And had it not been for the support of the community and talking with other streamers who have not had similar problems, but have had problems where they've had to deal with something that might relate, I probably would have quit. And I emailed Twitch about this. And I said, you know, this is happening. And what they saw was the word bot and follow. And they went, okay, she's worried about generic bot follower counts. No, I am not. I could care less. If anything, they're boosting my follower count and I'm not paying for them. Go for it, bots, enjoy. But that's not the problem. The problem is the names of these accounts. And if you had read the email, you would have known that. But you didn't. And so they sent back a generic page off of their FAQs that was about how to control generic bots. Like, that's not the issue. Can you please just read the dang thing and give me a response relevant to my issue? So I think that, yes, while we are just flooded with customers and clients and we can't hit everybody with a personalized response, the least they can do is read an email in its entirety before deciding on a few buzzwords what generic email to send back.
What your issue is before they send a resolution.
Yep.
It's not much. I mean, even if they send me a generic response back, it's fine, as long as it's a generic response relevant to my actual issue, instead of sending a generic response back based on, you know, oh, we did a control F and saw the word bot and follow, and we just went, there is the problem. No, it's not. Yeah, I had to write down exactly those words because they are bots, and it is a following account, but it's not the issue at hand. So just, for God's sakes, read the dang thing before just sending it back, please. That's all I ask of you.
I feel like some companies want to do that on purpose just so they can make you tired enough to, like, you know, like, forget it. This is, you know, and then it's gonna wash their hands clean of you without actually having to put any effort in. That's just my little conspiracy theory, but
that's the problem, though, isn't it? That's the problem with customer service today, is that they don't want to fix your problem. They want you to start being exhausted enough to not have a problem with them anymore. Yeah. Instead of taking up, you know, valuable, I mean, I hate to, like, you know, valuable customer, their, you know, customer service department, they want to just make sure that enough people, like, for example, let's say if 10 people call in, right? Or like 10 people write an email, whatever, and 4 people get frustrated enough to where they just, like, you know, stop, or like, they're like, you know what, whatever, I give up on this. That's still, they saved enough man hours, I suppose, out of those, you know, 4 people that they count that as a win, pretty much.
70% of your people are satisfied.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They count that as a win. So I feel like,
not that 70% are satisfied, it's that 30% are so dissatisfied that they just kind of gave up on it. That's
Yeah.
And I think that I relate that kind of to the meme that history meme that went around about the German plane, that they were reinforcing armor in certain places, and they said, oh, these planes are coming back and they've got holes in them in these certain places, and it's like, actually that's a good thing. It means that the planes actually made it back with these holes, you know. It's like that shows us that this is the kind of plane we need to put in the air, not the ones that are the problem. And I don't think that some companies who are so focused on just producing the next product and pushing it out there are thinking about it in that way. They're thinking about it more like, we are addressing what looks to be a problem, but it's actually a solution. And I don't think that customer service needs to be treated in archaic ways, in the ways that we can, you know, pick up a phone and just call and get a response, because there's just no chance. Not with 20 million people calling the phones. I get that. I know it. But slightly more just a slightly greater amount of attention into the actual issue and listening beyond just buzzwords would go so far in this industry in particular, in the gaming industry, because the gaming industry has grown to such a wild extent. And not just, and I love going to conventions back whenever pre-pandemic times, I loved going to conventions, and you got to meet the developers of new little indie games and stuff, and they were very interested in the beta side of it, but God forbid the game got out and you never heard from them ever again. It just happened.
I was kind of thinking about this earlier, right? And you know, trying to relate standard customer service. Like, you go to a grocery store, right? You know, you and I being from Texas, we have HEB, or we mentioned like Costco earlier. Good customer service. I mean, Costco has obviously been a bit of a larger scale, but
yeah,
I think something like that, you know, their customer service concerns are their customers in their current physical location. I think the really difficult thing with video games is that you might not know how much of an impact it's going to have, right? Like, especially with some of these indie games that explode. Like, you're a studio of 4 or 5 people, and then all of a sudden there's like 1 million people that have your game. And you know, as you mentioned Fall Guys earlier, I was actually following that game like up to launch and was playing it during launch, and they had a pretty rocky start. There was a lot of server issues the first couple of weeks, because there was, you know, just a metric shit ton of people trying to play their game, and they just didn't have the capacity for it. And I think their like social media guy is just a single person dealing with just this massive influx of people. So
yeah,
I think I definitely understand how it can be difficult from that perspective, you know, if your game unexpectedly blows up or something like that. But when it is, you know, when there are larger companies like EA or, you know, Bioware or whatever, I don't know those are the only 2 big companies I can think of.
Activision.
Yeah, Activision,
Gearbox.
there you go. Yeah, so like any of those, like I feel like they should probably have something in place, because they've grown over such a long period of time. They kind of know what to expect at this point, you know what I mean? So if a company like that has poor customer service, I would find it a lot easier, or a lot more difficult, should I say, to forgive that than I would with like an indie developer.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. It's a lot easier to forgive an indie company because they are 1 person or 5 people or that kind of thing, and it takes them time to get back to you. And but they also have a greater respect for your opinion because you are the people who are making them money. I don't think Stardew Valley, I don't think Concerned Ape ever expected it to get that large, ever.
No,
and
I would agree.
It's gone insane, and I'm thrilled for Concerned Ape because he's made such a great game. I mean, I don't know how many people are on that team, and I don't even know if I'm using he correctly. For all I know, Concerned Ape is a she developer. I don't know. I've got no idea. But I do know that Stardew Valley took off and became a huge, huge game, and they, bless them, have done really well to keep up with their game. They're really trying to hold on to it, and I never want Stardew Valley to be sold because they genuinely care about their game. And I don't want it to be sold for a profit for a company that ignores it, which kind of circles back to where we were at the first place, was if you run into a developer that buys a game and they just ignore it, does it affect your desire to play, even for nostalgia's sake? But I think that what is a really interesting point to bring up about why we chose this topic as a podcast is because Az brought up Anthem. And I had no idea what Anthem, I mean, I've heard of it. Beyond that, I had no clue. So I did some quick Wikipedia research, and then I asked Az, I was like, can you give me some more background on what this is? And it really opened up a can of worms, because this is not a problem that Anthem alone has had, or that the developers for Anthem had. But I do want Az to kind of expand on this for other people in the podcast like me who have no idea what we're talking about with the Anthem thing. So Az, what exactly happened, and can you explain why it's such a touchy thing with developers?
I'll try my best to. Obviously, I never played the game either. I knew it was going to be a crap shoot right from the start. Like, that's why I never bought it. I'm going back to my early topic. I never buy games right off the bat there. So for me, like, I knew it was going to be a crap shoot. Me and my friend were talking about it when it was being released. We're like, yeah, this is going to suck. But the thing is, a lot of people didn't. A lot of people they got caught up in the hype and they buy things like that, which I do want to point out to anybody watching this: never get caught up in the hype. It's not worth it. I mean, do your own research. Don't buy a game straight off just because a trailer tells you to buy a game, or it's going to be the next big thing. You know what I mean? Just wait. Trust me, there will be another game just like that 6 months from now. So I think that's an important thing. But for Anthem specifically, I think what it was EA popped it up as the next Destiny, et cetera, et cetera. People played it. Turns out to be a total crapshoot. Then they came out like last year saying, hey, we're going to rework this entire game. We're going to rework a bunch of stuff. We got this huge revamp coming in, give us some time, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then literally about last week, they were like, okay, you know what? Never mind. Anthem's canceled. We're done with this. We're washing our hands out of it. So people have been waiting for the last 2 years, I guess, if you count the year it was released. And then last year when they said they were going to do a revamp, and then leading up into this year where they're just like, you know what, never mind. We're not doing that revamp. It's one of those things where I feel like people should buy a game for what it is now and not what the future promise of it holds. If a game comes down to like, oh, don't worry, we'll kind of going back to what Artie was saying too as well. Like, when games get patched in later, they're like, oh, we'll fix it. We'll fix it in post. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I feel like with Anthem, like, if a game is promised, like, buy the game for what it is now and not for what it's going to become later. And that's basically the story of Anthem. I feel like a lot of these developers or a lot of these people buy these games because the developer will say something like, oh yeah, don't worry, we'll add this content, next year, and we'll have a bunch of stuff, and people get like, all right, we'll give them a chance. But it turns out like most of the time it never really happens like that. So that was a sad piece state of Anthem. Thank you. I try.
Solid. No, it really is. It's a solid piece of advice, and it does go back to not wanting to purchase a game without knowing that it's a completed product, because back in the day they had to be, and now they don't, because it's so easy to download a patch. People can go, oh, just download this patch and it's all ready to go. And I'm not saying patch downloads are terrible, because it's how we update fun games. I mean, like Stream Raiders has updates every freaking hour. I swear to God, it's like every hour Stream Raiders wants to update something, and I just want to throw my computer through a wall, because every time it says update, I'm like, why?
The thing is, I'm waiting for the sound cue telling me that it's ready, and I'm like, surely, like, it's been a while, right? I click over to it, I'm like, oh, an update, cool, thanks guys.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
That's what it was too. Is I think it's a great game, and I'm glad that they update it, because they give you new maps, and they're really keeping up to date with trying to keep it hip and neat, and all of the cool kids want to go play on the Tabletopia setup and the Egypt setup, and yeah, it's cool, but the updates are just one right after the other all the time. I've updated 4 times in a day. I wish I was exaggerating. I'm not. Yeah. I have just...
I've always said, I think it wouldn't be so bad though. I feel like I've said this on my stream. It takes 5 seconds to connect your Twitch account to Stream Raiders, but it takes about 10 years to actually load into the game. So it wouldn't be so bad if it was a quick loading, but no, it takes literally 10 years to actually load into the freaking game too. So
it's such a good game for streamers and for viewers, and I think it's a lot of fun. But the copious amount of updates is just wearing. Every time I open the game, I don't expect to open the game. I expect to open an update page every time I open it now. I'm just not expecting it to ever open the way it's supposed to. And I think that's kind of become part of the gameplay. It's practically my main menu. Oh, click off this, and update. It's like the loading screen. That's how I see it now, and just because it's happened so much. I get it, and I'm happy they're keeping it up to date and patching it, but oh my God, it's just so much. And coming back to the Anthem thing, I do want to ask about developers as large as EA. as Gearbox, as Activision, as Squeenix, which is what we lovingly call Square Enix, and just as all of these game developers that have continued to grow. NIS is one of my favorites. I don't play everything by NIS. I do not like Persona. I know that people go nuts for the Persona series. Sorry, Persona lovers, it's just not my thing. I prefer the Atelier and kind of happy-go-lucky, fun slime-killing games, you know? Yay, fun games. But Persona digs into the emotional, deep, dark side of NIS that we never knew existed. It's kind of like that happy cheerleader kid with this deep, dark secret, like she murders men and keeps them in her closet kind of thing. That's how I feel NIS handled Persona. But with that in mind, with all of these large companies, do you think that because the only thing they answer to are their profit margins and not necessarily their customers, they answer to their customer base, but not to their customers themselves. Do you think because the only thing that they respond to is their profit margins, that they have a greater urge to not hold themselves accountable, much like in the sense of Anthem, where they can just go, oh, tough for you, ha ha ha, and just shut it down and still know people are going to come back and buy their games because they are that developer? So, Aussie, what do you think?
I mean, yes. No, to elaborate, actually, it's funny that you guys are bringing up Anthem. So Anthem was a game that I personally did buy, and
Boo.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed
Boo.
it. With that said, I went into it with tempered expectations. I think the big issue with that game, and frankly with like Cyberpunk, since we were talking about that earlier, is people are going into them expecting it to be like God's gift to gaming. Like this thing's gonna fucking give you a back massage while you're playing it. You know what I mean? Like it's just gonna be. I was gonna say.
How much did you pay for it?
What's that?
How much did you pay for it?
Anthem?
Yeah.
I bought it when it first came out. So there was a beta or a demo prior to it coming out. I played that for like 10 plus hours, and I was like, this is enough to convince me. If the game is just this, I'm okay with that being the game. I think the problem was, as it was leading up to release, they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be, you know, it's the next Destiny. It's got all this miles of content. This is going to be the next thing. This is going to be live service for the next X number of years. We're going to add all this stuff. Yeah. And I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm happy with the base game. Like I'm good with that. And I picked it up knowing that with a couple of friends, played through the entire thing co-op, knew what I was getting into, and I enjoyed it. I had a fun time with it. It was a fun co-op game. When you got to the end, there wasn't a whole lot to do. Like there wasn't a ton of in-game content. And then as mentioned, rather than adding additional content, because that was the biggest issue for me, I got to the end game and I was like, all right, there's fuck all to do. I'm going to go play something else.
Yeah.
But rather than adding the additional content that was kind of promised ahead of time, right? It was, they're like, hey, we realize this isn't quite what you guys wanted, but we will fix it. And it was like, okay, that's cool, whatever, you know. In my head, I was like, I'm already done with the game. Like I got my time out of it. I don't really care if they add more stuff. Maybe I'll go back and check it out. That's cool. So like last week or whatever it was, when they're like, oh yeah, we're done with it. It's just being shelved. That was kind of a bummer to me because it's just like it's kind of a letdown because it would have been nice to have more of it. But like I genuinely did not dislike the game. I thought it was fun to play through with friends. And with that said, I think I'm a terrible critic, which is like part of me wants to go play Cyberpunk right now just to be like, is it really as bad as people are like bitching about it, or is people just super jaded and want what they want? And
I think it's because of the fact, like, you know, just to kind of expand on your topic there, Aussie, I think it's because of the fact that people have these huge expectations they set for themselves and then they end up being disappointed. You know what I mean? Just like you, I kind of temper my expectations a little bit. Like, if I'm going to watch a movie, like, for example, Pacific Rim, right? All I want to watch a movie is like with kaijus and robots beating the crap out of each other. You know, like, I don't want some deep, complicated story. Yeah, right. Like that's a good enough story. I get it. Like I know I don't want it to be like Interstellar or like, you know, Inception, where I'm like, oh, I need to be blown away by the story. It's like, no,
people
I just want to
love old Godzilla movies for the acting, you know?
Yeah. Or the CGI, you know, let's be real here. But at the same time, I feel like if a developer promises, oh, we're gonna support this for X number of years, and then literally as soon as everything goes, you know, like it goes, you know, everything goes down, or like, you know, something doesn't work out the way they wanted to, they're like, you know what, on second thought, we don't want to support this anymore either. So I feel like I'm usually I'm a guy that values like someone's word really highly. So if someone says something and then they kind of like turn their back on it afterwards, it's kind of like, well, you just said you were gonna do that, but you didn't. So it's kind of like, yeah.
A bonus question: do you feel like we put up with games being glitchy in the past because we had to, and we feel like we don't want to put up with games being glitchy now because we shouldn't have to?
I think, I mean, that kind of wraps in. I think that's part of why I'm like not a super harsh critic for games, as you were kind of saying earlier, right? Like how a game released is how a game was. Like if there were bugs, it is what it is. I remember I played so much fucking Double Dragons as a kid. I remember the end of the very first like stage, not even the first stage. It's like the end of the first walkway. You could just go up to the wall and keep walking, and your character would just like shoot up the wall just on a loop over and over and over. And just random things like that, right? Like that was one of the most popular games on the NES, and like even the old Nintendo or like the old Mario games had so many bugs and shit in them, and it was just stuff that you'd be like, oh yeah, I'll check this out, this is pretty cool. Whereas something like that would happen nowadays, somebody would take a clip of it, throw it on Twitter, and be like, oh my god, this game's broken as hell. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's actually very true. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me personally, like I don't mind bugs. More often than not, like I find bugs to be hilarious. I'm like, oh, that's not supposed to happen. Whereas some people,
why we still play Dauntless.
I was gonna say, whereas some people get very upset about them. But yeah, I think I'm pretty forgiving in that department. But I think I don't know if it's because I've dealt with it in the past, and then I don't know if that's part of why people nowadays get super pissed when games are buggy, is because like that's all they've known, right? They've known games that can be patched and can be updated. Like you were talking about Sierra games earlier, and I had flashbacks to being in a dollar store with a bin full of like dollar floppy disks and picking up like Jazz Jackrabbit as a kid. I mean,
Putt goes to the moon.
What you got is what you got back then.
Right. I think that I almost want to just keep digging on this topic forever, but I'm going to bring up one more major question on those lines. I feel that the nature of gaming and gamers has changed, and that's why people get so pissy about bugs and about glitches in games. Not necessarily because it's a product where we didn't lower our expectations, like you're saying, to temper your expectations about a game coming out, but rather because competitive gaming has become such a popular pastime, even so much that its esports have become a very high-paying trade, and people train for this kind of thing. So whenever the game is at fault, they feel that they can't properly train for this kind of thing, or that people have changed personality-wise in regards to the video games and the way that they handle video games, less as a leisure and more as a completionist or getting better at it than everybody else because of online competitions. I think that that's a major reason, at least on my end, why gamers and clients and customers get so angry about the slightest little bug. Like you said, the double dragon thing, you can just run straight up the wall and then loop forever, and then it's ridiculous and it's silly, and to us, yes, it is. And even on like old Sega Genesis games, there's a part of Busby where there's a major glitch in there too. Sonic has a few of them too. Sometimes they're exploitable for speedrunners, and they can use these glitches to their advantages, so they've taken advantage of doing that. But in regards to competitive games or online games, I feel like because games have gone online, people are more frustrated with glitches because it affects the way they play with other people, either co-op or competitively, much like on Tibia. If you have a bad internet connection, or something, we used to call it, and I'm sure it's still called that in every game that I know of, is called rubber banding. You're moving forward and then suddenly you're snapped back 10 paces. And so now you're not next to the dragon anymore. Now you're way back there, and on your screen, you were next to the dragon. You've got people yelling at you on the phone or whatever you're doing, saying, why aren't you up here? And I am up here. And then, 5 seconds later, you rubber band backwards. And so that was a big problem that came out. That's the co-op side of it. But on the competitive side, how many times have you lost a game due to a glitch? And it's just pissed you off to no end. And I think that maybe that's why nowadays people are less inclined to be as forgiving with video game glitches and bugs, and why they get so annoyed with patches and updates and things like that, because they just want to have it right the first time so they can feel like the pro gamer they think they are. That's
what's more like, I think it's also more like, no one really likes bugs, let's be honest. Like, I hate bugs in a game too. Like, I know I played Dauntless a lot, and that's like Bug City Central, but let's be honest, no one really likes having bugs in their game. Or like, for example, I know like when I first started playing Among Us, I bought the game the very first day I was trying to play with friends, and the game, I guess the servers were down or like it was bugging out. We couldn't join co-op. You know, it was frustrating because we had set aside some time to play with each other, and we couldn't play co-op Among Us with that specific day. So bugs are definitely frustrating, and I definitely look forward to updates and patches. When they say they're going to fix something, and they do. And but I think I think just on that topic is as well is a lot of people want a game to be their forever game. That's just my personal opinion. They want this, that game to be their forever game, and they want it to be, not filled with any bugs or very minimal bugs, and they just want to play that forever. But the thing is, these people rush through the game like within a week, finish everything, then they're like, okay, so what do I do now? And then, but no game ever has that amount of content to which it can satisfy them. So that's also where I guess the disappointment comes from too.
We're insatiable as gamers,
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's no game out there that can just satiate even the hardcore people and also the casual people. You know what I mean? If there is, I've yet to see it.
I think the internet's a beautiful thing. Without it, I wouldn't have met you fine people, and so many of the fine people that follow the podcast. So many of my friends, one of my best friends in the world in real life, I met online through Tibia, through an MMO, and I think that the internet's a great thing. I also think that the internet has, as Ozzy put it, has made us insatiable. We just want we want games to be exact the first time, and we want them to be right, because it's not about, oh, here's a cute fun little glitch where my mom ran into the genitalia cavern that they forgot to take out of the game. I mean, it's not something where it's just like a funny an extra that was accidentally an extra, or a little bug that was kind of an accident, like a monster spawns and it has the face of an NPC kind of things, where it's just like, oh, this is ridiculous, ha ha ha, but more about gameplay interference. And I think that competitive online gaming, or even cooperative online gaming, and the internet with its effect on gaming in general, has made people more impatient to bugs and to glitches, because they just feel like, I paid for this and I want it entirely, and I want it now, and I want it exact, and I want it perfect. But you're right, before, even back in the day, the game was what you got. So they were less inclined to release a game if they had a feeling it was buggy, but it still happened. And in the event that it happened, and believe it or not, I remember this from way back in the day, one of the Sierra games got released and there was something wrong with it. And they released the disk number 5 installation disk and said you need to reinstall it with this new disk 5. So that was the old version of a patch. And because they said, we cannot believe, because you couldn't finish the game. You couldn't finish it. And that's a huge thing. It's not just like, oh, the monster glitched and killed me whenever it was 900 feet away from me, I mean, it's not just that. It's like you couldn't finish the freaking plot. And that's the worst thing that could happen in a game. So they genuinely said, if you give us the game code that came with it, and we will send you on our dime the new disc for the final install, because something went wrong on that disc, which was total of taking it back to customer service. That's a baller move. That was awesome. That is a show of force in the customer service world, to say, on our dime, we're going to ship you disc 5 because it was our fault that it got released like that in the first place. That was awesome. That's the kind of developer I want to see in the future. I want to see developers go out of their way to make sure that they recognize their mistakes, own up to them, and don't give a generic email gross response about, we here at so-and-so development team would like to issue an apology for any inconveniences caused by playing blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, just like it's politics talk. I want to hear somebody be genuine about their apology, much like Sierra did with that game, and know that bugs happen. But if you support fixing the issue, that I care more about you as a developer, as a game producer, as a whatever it is you do, if you genuinely show a concern about me as a customer rather than me as a customer base. I'm not a number, I'm a person who had an issue, and I think that developers need to embrace this fact again and just realize that it's not 200 people playing your game, it's 200 million people playing your game. Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge difference. Massive.
So I think like a good example of that too, of just a developer who's released something that's on the buggier side and then kind of bounced back from it. For either of you, I don't know if you're familiar with No Man's Sky. That was a game when it was coming out. Everybody was like, this game's going to be amazing. Like, it's endless. It's this infinite universe, infinite possibilities. There's all this crazy stuff that's going to happen. And that basically released, I don't want to say it flopped, but like it hit some turbulence. And it did very poorly when it first released. And then they basically just they've been doing, I think up to even today, they've been doing updates, just free updates for the past, several years, improving everything.
Yeah, they've definitely changed it around.
With it, they've been releasing additional content of like, here's all the stuff we kind of like said was going to be with the initial release, and they've been just adding just tons of free content. Not my favorite game. I've tried it. It's just not my thing. But it's been interesting to see the evolution of that and like the reputation of the company and the guy. I think it was like one specific guy who was kind of like in charge of a lot of it, but the company as a whole seems to have done a very good job of going from like very negative review to very positive review and being kind of like, respected by their fan base again. From
kudos to them,
where they really like slipped and lost a lot of that traction with their fans.
That was actually one of the questions I had on our little list here, was what can a developer do to recover from a poor reputation? And that's a really good point there, because I know we touched on it a little bit, is that you screwed up, own up, fix it.
Yeah.
God, that's a life lesson. That's not even a business lesson. That's something your parents should have taught you whenever you were growing up. You screwed up. Answer for it. Ta-da! I mean, it's like that. Those are two pieces of the same penny. You got two sides of the same coin. I don't see why game developers, businesses in general, seem to think that the answer to screwing up is generic and ignore it, or scapegoat it away from something, or divert.
It could be for legal reasons too, though. Honestly, I feel like if you accept the blame, then people can sue you for that as well. That's why.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate the fact that it is, but I think that's the reason why most companies won't do that. Is because then at that point you're accepting blame, and then you're opening yourself up to lawsuits at that point.
That's true. It's a good point. So I think that I guess as we wrap up this session of Party Buff here, as we've talked about, developers and the support in the industry and how it's grown over the course of, the many years that we've been gaming and the years beyond this for our gamer friends who are older than us. Like I said, my mom's been playing games for years. My dad was playing games for years. He was the person with the very first calculator in his high school. He used to rent it out to teachers and students to make extra money. We've had technology around us forever. But for anybody who's grown up with video games or with any kind of customer service in the technology industry, watching things change and grow and mesh, there is no one answer, I think, is what we've kind of come to, is that, we're all kind of going, yeah, but, and that's what I love about you guys, is that, we're playing devil's advocate for each other and for the companies that we bash. And it's like, yeah, but, we're kind of scooting around it a little bit.
Gotta make all sides, gotta
that's
get
what it
each
is.
Perspective.
That's why I love y'all. It's because that's what this is about. Is about addressing our grievances and knowing that there isn't one easy solution. But as purchasers in this industry, I think it's important for other people, for our viewers and listeners to know. And if they have connections into this industry, it's like, this is how people who play these games feel. And legitimately, this is how they feel. This isn't an email riddled with cuss words and bad grammar. This is a genuine conversation between friends, between streamers, between gamers, about how we see your handling of your industry. It's not screaming, and I've never been a fan of that. If you write an email to a customer service support, and if you're coming out there riddled with cuss words and just like bad grammar and terrible assessments of their company, you're not going to get a response, and frankly, you don't deserve one. But it's, if you come out and say, this was an issue, we wanted to bring it up, we understand there's not an easy solution, but you have a whole team of people at your disposal. It's about time you use them. That's what I want to tell the developers, is you're doing great, but you could always be better, and I understand your market's huge. So, sorry in advance.
God of War not too long ago. There was a "Do not be sorry, be better."
Do not be sorry, be better. Yeah.
It's a good quote. It's a good quote. I love that quote.
Listen to your own advice, God of War. No, it's just that's good. That's a good one. So I would like to thank Azrenix and Oscitater, and we do miss our beloved DS the Original, but he has had some stuff going on, so hopefully he'll be back soon for the next Party Buff. And thank you so much to the listeners and to the viewers as well who come on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you happen to find us, because we did have a bit of a delay, but we're back at it, and who knows, we might even put out a bonus episode just to say thank you for putting up with our little delays here. And as a reminder, we are looking for sponsors. So if you know of anybody who runs a company who is looking to get some shout outs on Party Buff, please have them contact me at partybuffpodcast@gmail.com. It's all one word, partybuffpodcast@gmail.com, and we can talk about running a sponsorship deal. And that way, and we always try to support our local and friendly gamer businesses. So make sure you reach out to us too. Once again, thank you, thank you, Aussie. We miss you, DS, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Later, guys.
Party Buff.